Hello and welcome to Laytechs Weekly episode 14th October 2020. Laytechs Weekly is brought to you by Laytechs, your protection from tech ignorance. My name is Sean. I know I have been away for last week and 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago and all that. But I have been taking the advantage of this post-lockdown period to travel quite a bit and before monsoon hits this part of the world. And now that lockdown is back and monsoon is back, I think I'll be a lot more frequent from now on until I don't know when. In any case, news of the week. Microsoft announced new Surface Pro X, 10 Surface Pro X, and Surface Laptop Go. Pro X gets a minor update on performance and battery, and an SQ2 ARM processor, which Microsoft claims more enhanced performance. This isn't really second generation Pro X, more like a 1.5, because it's just meh. And it does come in a new platinum color, which is quite weird because the Pro laptop and the Surface Pro came with the black color as the new, more premium color, and now that the Pro X, which comes in black, now comes in a platinum as the premium. They need to have more colors. Although Microsoft also said there are more software developers building for ARM architecture and a better x64 emulator, it is still very early days for this to be considered a proper work device. If you have used emulators in the past, you know that they are buggy all the time and always overheat your system. Okay, for those who don't understand what an emulator is that whenever we have a lot of computers and a lot of systems, right? You have iOS, you have Android, you have Microsoft, and then you have Apple. These are the major ones. Of course, you have Linux and everything on the side as well. But every single one of this OS is built on a kind of like a separate architecture, kind of like a different set of languages. And in order for a set of apps that is built for, let's say, version 1, let's say in this case, Microsoft's x86 and x64, to be used on a different architecture hardware, you need to have a kind of like a software to emulate, to convert, like kind of a bridge from one version to another. And the problem when you're bridging is that you are not properly and efficiently utilizing the software and utilizing the hardware and utilizing the efficiency of your device. And as a result, emulated software can get a bit buggy. And they also tend to overheat your system because it kind of overclocks things and uses a little bit too much resources, more than usual, because it's not optimized for your hardware or your system. So although the device is very beautiful, the Surface Pro X, I have quite a number of friends who say, you know what, I think I should buy this. It's amazing. At this point, it feels more like an overglorified iPad Pro. Although compared to iPad Pro, I guess it can do a bit. Some things better than iPad Pro, at least browser stuff can be better than iPad Pro. But in any case, in terms of replacing your full laptop machine, can't really do that. That is a bit of a problem. So if I were you, I would hold on to a few more years to wait for app developers to fully port over all the best apps like content creation apps and everything into ARM system, which Apple is also pushing for with their silicon chips. Silicon chips are essentially their version of ARM or fanless chips. So because both of them are pushing this at the same time, they are also forcing developers to create a new set of apps that are optimized for this new architecture. And maybe give it 1 or 2 more years and you should be able to get more apps working perfectly fine as well. So in the meantime, you can consider the Surface Laptop Go, which is Microsoft's take on the MacBook Air range and also Chromebooks. It has a smaller footprint, lighter and cheaper traditional clamshell design. It's very practical. It has very nice colors, one of which looks eerily similar to Mac's Gold, or what's that called? Rose Gold, yeah. It's got all the features we love in laptops, and it starts at a very affordable price. The basic model comes with eMMC storage, which only comes up to 65 gigabytes. So I will only recommend this on people who live entirely on the cloud. Say, for example, you buy this laptop and you live completely on a Google Cloud. Google Cloud mostly, because even if you're on the Microsoft Cloud, right, you still need to have Word, Excel, and PowerPoint and all these things installed into your hardware device, unless you're using the 365 online version, the cloud version. In which, if I were to compare, I still think Google works better because their cloud syncing, everything is a lot more advanced than Microsoft. Sometimes from Microsoft, you get a hit and miss. You may not be able to save some versions, and your version histories may not be so much, and collaboration is not as good. So if you are working on live, go to Google. But that's a different story for a different time. So if you are not fully on the cloud, I would recommend you go for the one step up, which is an Intel i5. Well, all of them have Intel i5 processors, which one has 128 gigabytes of storage, which is ample. It's not superb, it's not, but you can live with it. And 8 gigabytes of RAM. Yeah, fair enough. And that will probably set you back close to 3,000 ringgit. That is direct conversion from US dollars. We don't know what the Malaysian price is because the official one has not been released yet. That is actually pretty impressive compared to the MacBook Air, which starts at 4,000 odd. But of course, the MacBook Air would give you better finishing because it's a full aluminum, and this one has a little bit of polycarbonate in it. But if you're comparing against other Windows laptops, you have to really love the hardware. I mean, Surface hardware, there's a lot to love with the hardware, with the design and everything. But at the price that you're paying, right, you can actually get a lot more powerful laptops from the likes of Acer, Asus, and all the other brands, right, for maybe slightly even less price. So, but if you're going for branded and cool and the alter ego of the MacBook, then yeah, this is good. I mean, I'm very tempted to get one. Google's new hardware did not impress. They didn't feel that amazing, in my opinion. I mean, last week they announced a whole slew of new hardware. They include a Chromecast, which now comes with a remote, which is something that they should have done a long time ago. But to be fair, the old Chromecasts rely a lot on our mobile devices because at that time they wanted to make something that was cheap, like a very cheap and affordable TV box. So they took a lot of the controls and put it into our mobile devices because they think that since we already have our mobile devices anyway, might as well have all the controls be in there. So what the Chromecast used to do is just like kind of like a receiver or transceiver of information back and forth. But now I think it's a little bit more grown up. It's become a box with a remote, and you don't have to rely on your mobile device to do all the controlling, which is good. I don't really like the colors though. Even their new Google Home, which they call it the Nest now, it's not impressive. It's made of cloth, got a dullest pastel colors, and I don't know. It's the kind of stuff when you put in your living room and it just blends in and you can't see it. And I do hope that sometimes I want to be able to have something that stands out, kind of like a feature device, especially if I'm paying a bit for it. And I'm a bit of a geek and I want people to spot it right away when they get into my house. So I want the color to be a bit more stunning. Next up is the Pixel 5, which missed a lot of fancy features that the Pixel 4 had. And it also didn't seem to fare well against Samsung and Apple flagships. That's because Google decided to move away from flagship range and put the Pixel 5 into the mid-range model this year. On the hardware end, it still has two back cameras. There's a physical fingerprint sensor at the back as well, which is weird considering all the tech surrounding on-screen sensors. But then again, they can argue security is always better on mechanical versions instead of the on-screen versions. Fair enough, I can buy that. And it does make sense to have the fingerprint at the back instead of the front because it smudges your screen and all that kind of stuff. Yep, I can live with that. At the front, we now have a punch hole camera at the top left side, which is nice because you don't have a giant forehead anymore. But that also means that last year's experimental radar sensor is no longer available. Pixel 5 comes with 5G right off the bat. Google said a lot of the camera's performance upgrades comes in software, so we will have to wait to see extensive testings to be able to determine if it's a good upgrade. When they moved the Pixel 5 into mid-range, they also blur the lines between their own models, which is the 4A. The 4A 5G is essentially a Pixel 5 but without waterproofing and with slower screen refresh rate. It also has a larger screen of 6.1 inch than compared to the 4A, which is about 5.7. So in order to make the 5 look a bit more interesting, they actually removed the waterproofing. They did not apply the waterproofing element, which is essentially available in every single mobile device that is shipped across the world today, even the low range ones. They had to remove waterproofing in order to make the 5 look more appealing. And at this point, I think, I don't know about you, but I am so used to getting my phone wet that I don't feel safe handling a non-waterproof device anymore. So I would by default go to the Pixel 5 because now that it's cheaper. And if I were to go for a Google device, I would go for the Pixel 5 at this point, not even the 4A. Unless you want to use it as like really an entry-level device, then yeah, fair enough. But it is nice that the Pixel 4A has 5G. Yeah. Of course, you can't get Google devices in Malaysia officially, so you will have to rely on grey importers. But if you are geeky enough, warranty problems will never deter you from getting the best Google devices. So people who complain about no warranty, they don't want to buy Google device because there's no warranty, you are not geek enough for that. You are not the kind of adventurers who will step into the unknown and risk dropping down the cliff without a safety net. For that case, go to Samsung devices. Yesterday, Apple launched Apple's new range of iPhones, which is the largest range yet. You know, technological advancement has reached a peak when companies start introducing nicer colors and more sizes. And this year, Apple is proving that right. The iPhone 12 now comes in 3 models. You have the Mini, the 12 proper, and the 12 Pro range, in which the Pro has the Pro and the Pro Max. So yeah, there's quite a lot of them as well. And all of them actually look like a throwback to the iPhone 4 days with the industrial squarish borders. If you don't remember how the iPhone 4 used to look like, imagine the iPad Pro with that kind of border. So iPhone 4 used to have similar design. Aside from that, upgrades are evolutionary. So you have slightly better cameras, slightly faster processor, which we can't provide until we run a side-by-side test to compare. An OLED screen on all devices, which is nice because Apple has been still using their LCDs for the longest time. I mean, my 11 is still an LCD screen. But Apple does seem to always be a step behind on screens. Everybody is using like full LED or QLED already at this point. iPhone is just coming up to OLED. But Apple can argue that it's their battery management and everything, but to be honest, no, it's a bad excuse because I use iPhones and the battery management isn't exactly that well. How the most emphasis they put on battery management is that they cut apps from running behind. They don't allow apps running from behind in order to minimize the battery consumption. Whereas when you're on Android, when you put an app behind, most of them will actually stay on pause. And then when you pick it up again, you can immediately continue without having to restart the app again. In terms of iPhones, they tend to always just shut down and you have to restart the whole thing again long enough. So you can't use battery management as an excuse because the battery life is not exactly super long anyway. And now that iOS 14 is out and everybody's complaining that battery is being drained way faster, it could be a bug, but yeah. In any case, they also brought the LiDAR sensor from the iPad Pro on their Pro models, which should improve AR and camera depth of field photography capabilities. So those portrait photographs where you can never get the little blurrings right? I guess with LiDAR, you should get it right. You can now shoot RAW, which Apple calls the Pro RAW, which I believe all Android devices already have for the longest time. And I hope Pro RAW means also that you can have full Pro camera control, which Apple never gives its users because Apple believes that users are not smart enough to be able to shoot completely pro on the devices. But in any case, we'll have to see. I was looking forward to a more compact forehead this time around because a lot of leaked renders showed smaller foreheads, but I guess maybe next year. All iPhone 12s will come with 5G and will ship without charging adapters and earphones. Apple says this is their move to be more, quote, environmentally friendly, and we expect this move to be copied by other manufacturers to save cost under ethical pretenses. Huawei announced Mate 40 on 2022, announces Mate 40 on 22nd October. Huawei fans, hold on to your seats. I don't know if there are any more Huawei fans these days, but I think there are people who still buy Huawei despite the fact that they can't use a lot of the Google apps. But in any case, the Mate 40 unveil is very soon. Rumors surrounding these devices include a final run at the Kirin chip. The reason why they're not using the Kirin chip anymore is because they're under pressure by Trump. That whole China spying on everyone thing. Unless, of course, Trump doesn't win the election and the US backtracks on Huawei's China spying the world conspiracy, they might continue to use the Kirin chip on the next iteration. And up to 6.7 inch screen on the Mate Pro. I think it's 6.1 inch on the Mate. We don't know if the Mate Pro will have a curved screen, but at this point, I think curved screens are a little bit out of date, and I do prefer flat screens because it's easier for you to get screen protectors. This week's Tech of the Week, Alphabet X plant buggy to improve crop for sustainability. Alphabet is Google's parent company. We know that in the coming decades, we will have more people than food there is to feed us. And as climate change threatens livestock and biodiversity, this is becoming an end-of-the-world scenario. Google's parent company, Alphabet, unveiled a new moonshot project that attempts to use AI to improve agriculture, which they call Mineral. Okay, for those who don't know what the Google/Alphabet moonshot project is, it's called the Google X at the time. It is actually a project which they use to kind of like, it's got nothing to do with profits. It's got something to do with pushing the boundaries of technology. So they used to have this project called the Loon project, where they shoot up balloons into the sky to feed Wi-Fi in the most remote parts of the world. They also Google's what is this called? Google's self-driving car was a moonshot project. There are quite a lot of Google moonshot projects. I think at the top of my mind, I don't really remember what are they. But Google had a lot of moonshot projects, which they take in, they cancel, and they move forward with other stuff. So this new one is called Mineral. The project focuses on sustainable food production and farming at large scales, using software and hardware that incorporates artificial intelligence, simulation, sensors, robotics, and more. Their aim is to use all the information gathered to identify the exact amount of nutrition required for optimum growth. So they are even able to do that by extracting the environment, projecting the environment, and projecting and running a simulation to see if how much this batch of plants, how much of nutrition this batch of plants need based on the projection, and feed them that amount in order to keep things very efficient, no overfeeding and no underfeeding, so that the crop yield will be the highest possible. And they also will use robotics to speed up process previously done with vehicles, animals, and people. Assuming we don't stop multiplying like rabbits, live longer, and destroying the biodiversity of the world, we will need to figure out how to feed ourselves in the new age. And this is pushing forward for that. Right, so that's all for Laytechs Weekly this week. Laytechs Weekly is available on Anchor FM, Google Overcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Radio Republic, and more. Our videos are available on YouTube, and I post bits and clips on Instagram and Facebook. I know that I haven't been posting a lot lately because I'm quite busy with stuff, but I promise you I will get back to this as soon as possible, feed you a little bit of bits and clips, and hopefully lure you to listen to more full-length podcast stuff. Right, so that's all for Laytechs Weekly episode 14th October 2020. My name is Sean. Stay safe, wear a mask. Au revoir.